Hey, am I audible? I believe I am. I'm just going to try to get the comments window open here. I'm going to mess with this. I accidentally started the stream. Stats. I need the chat as well. Give me one sec. And then sign in. Alright. I don't know why it's making me sign in again for the chat window, but I'm going to do it. Should be good. All right, starting a little bit early here, but I figured I would just kind of get this out there. Get set up, do all that stuff. I think there were a couple more topics I wanted to discuss for the bow and arrow video, so I thought I may as well just do a stream and show the process that way, and then I can take that video footage and put it into the video. Um, so let me go ahead. I could just show the kind of like the script here. Yeah, so the screen's very big. Okay. Close this for now. Okay. Yeah, so usually this is how I organize all my YouTube videos. I just have like a script. I make it, I change the title, I put the date on there, all that stuff. And I just kind of draft it. Sometimes I start with the short, and then I just kind of draft the video stuff. So I was going to go ahead and do kind of like this stuff right here today. I figured out a method I can use to basically create the arrow that goes with the bow. You could create it in the same Blender file, and then you could just export it. You just have to kind of like hide and show the mesh in Godot. You could also just choose to model the arrow in a separate file, but I kind of like having them together. And just with this minor management stuff, it's not really too bad. So we'll just create an arrow real quick, 3D model it. Shouldn't be too difficult. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll go export everything to Godot. I did talk about kind of how it's set up in my game currently, but what we're going to do is just create a fresh project. I'll import the character, the bow, and the arrow, and we'll just kind of make like a quick one-off little thing that we can do there. Or maybe I'll just create a new scene or something. We'll just do something like that. So anyway, we'll get started here. Just gonna move this script out of the way. Okay, I had to kind of change my microphone layout a little bit. It's kind of hard to see all my screens. But this should be as good as it'll get for now. Alright, so let me just open up the bow here. So I actually do have an arrow model I made already on it. but I'll go ahead and just redo this. It's really, really simple. There's really not much we need to worry about here. But I'll just go ahead and hide it. Gonna move around the screen a little bit. Just toggle the full screen here. It's just a little bit easier when capturing the video. Yeah, so how is everyone doing today? Hope everyone's well. I'm doing alright, personally. Yeah, so just to make the arrow, it's going to be real simple. Let's go ahead. So here's what you do. Basically, step one is just import your reference file. I got one right here. It just looks like this. Typically, you can just find them anywhere. Google, whatnot. Because if I just Google bow and arrow reference, I should be able to get it. I set up this tool called Power Toys on Windows. It's really useful because I can also just search from here. So I can say like arrow reference, right? And I could search here, and it just goes to your default browser or your default search engine. You can kind of see, and then it gave me arrow functions. That's great. But yeah, just go to images. Yeah, find an arrow. This is the one. This is the exact one that I used. And then all you have to do is just click it. I like to put it in a folder first. So like, put it in my temp folder where I just kind of have random stuff like right here, and then you just drag it into your Blender file. Pretty straightforward. But we don't need this. Won't let me undo it. All right, there we go. And then basically everything else is exactly what you would expect. I'm gonna hide the bow here, and then we'll just create a new cube. You could do this like with a vertex as well. It's really not too bad. And then just take the cube, scale it down a whole bunch. We'll move it to the side here in edit mode. And then let's just go ahead and add our mirror and our subdivision surface. Another thing I like to do is tab out, go to object mode to shade smooth. Then we can go back into edit mode. We turn the clipping on. Just move. One thing I think is also going to be useful here is if you select this face, and just delete the face, you don't have to worry about there being like extra geometry inside when you're working on this. So I'm just going to go ahead, and if you move it together with your clipping on, it should be good now. Move to top view, and then we're just going to pull this together. So reference is a little bit off angle here, so what I'm going to do is just take it, move it. Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay. I also, if you notice over here, I also like to disable selection on the arrow because, or the reference, just so we don't like select it a whole bunch by accident. Okay. Now we can edit the model here. So what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to turn the X-ray on. Oh yeah, let me also enable screencast keys. Hit Z to do the X-ray toggle, and I'm just going to select and move all of the vertices. So you want to do this this way, because if you don't turn this on and you just select the two here, it's only going to move the two at the top. You can see how that happens. So I like to just do it this way. Yeah, and then while we're here, let's also just turn this around. Just select it, SZ to scale it down a bit more. That should be good. And that will help us with the, there we go. Now we can go back. All right, and then basically what we can do here is we can make these parts here. So we'll start at the top, zoom in a little bit, do the turn on the X-ray, and then what we can do to do this part, make one extrusion, line it up here, and then one here. And then we're going to want to insert a couple like this. So what this will do is it will help us change the thickness, right? We could also just scale this in a little bit because I did move the reference. There we go. It's going to be a little easier to follow. And then I'm going to select these two we just made, pull them out. Okay, so one problem we're going to have, if we look at this arrow now, is that this is pretty smooth, right? So the way we can fix that to make this more jutted is just take the edge loop here. You can just hold Alt and click. And if you do Shift E, this will give you edge crease mode. Hit 1, and now it's creased. Just do the same thing on this side. Save. The other option is you can also just add another edge loop and do, but this saves you some geometry as well. I'm gonna slide these back to scale it up a little bit. On the Z as well. There we go. And now that looks much more in line with what we were seeing on the reference image. And if you really wanted to, you can add kind of like that too. This is going to be basically the same idea right here. So just go ahead, extrude this up a little bit, give ourselves a little bit of room. And then I'm just going to add something like here. This one I'm going to slide down a little bit. So we can add another one. Same thing as here. Just scale it a little bit. Move it out as well. This one I'm going to Shift E. And then, yeah, there we go. Yes, we also want to raise these too. And now we should be looking pretty good. As for the arrow head, we're probably going to want to flatten it a little bit. But let's just extrude it first, and then we can worry about that. We'll turn our X-ray back on here. I'm going to move this basically. So I do have, I think, here's how I'm going to do it. Let's move this down a little bit, and then I can move this out. And then we can extrude a little bit, move this in, do the same thing over here. I need it kind of like this base. Of course, this is also, I think we could just crease it. Yeah, that works too. We get ourselves kind of the start of the arrowhead, so that's very useful. I'm going to do something similar along these lines. So the problem with this one is that we have also this part jutting out. We can worry about that later. Let's just go ahead and, oops, turn on the extrude again. Move this. Just kind of move this down a little bit, just like this. Oops. So now you can kind of see the arrows pointed. Also Shift D this here. If you want to do like the extra edge piece, I believe you could just select this face here and extrude it out a little bit. Just scale it in. There you go. That will solve it. Now, what we'll want to do here is just select. I think we want to just scale. We'll just turn on proportional editing and scale. Oops. Where is my proportional editing tool? Right. Oh, proportional size is atrociously large. Okay, there we go. Let's go back to where we were. There we go. We can scale this down a little bit to flatten the head. That should be good to go. So now I got the flat arrowhead. You could also potentially crease these too if you want to just get it kind of flatter. I don't think it's necessary. Maybe these. But again, yeah, I think it's fine the way it is. And then we could also potentially just, oops. Just going to kind of move this up a little bit, just get a little bit of a point. And then we can just scale this one all the way down. So now we got our little arrowhead. Let's go ahead and do the back of the arrow now. Basically same process. Turn on the X-ray, just put it back on vertex mode, move this. And then we're just going to go ahead, add the, just move this about, oops. And then just crease. And we can scale this. Should look fine now. Let's go a little bit out like that too. And then for this part, same idea. Now it depends on how much you actually like want to follow this reference, but for over here I don't particularly care about doing that last part, so I'm just going to skip it. I mean this last thing here, but I'm going to do the arrow's feathers. Same thing though, just add a part where we can kind of crease this. And then what we can do is we could just select these here, extrude it out. Yep, extrude it out. And it will just kind of follow Same thing here. Follow this contour. So if we look at the arrowhead now, there is one thing that we're going to see, and that this needs to be like flattened. So we're just going to go ahead, select that, SC it very, very small. And then we're going to add one more edge loop here. Also shrink that down a lot. And then we probably want to shift E, crease it as well to just keep that arrow shape. So now we should be in good shape. And then lastly, you can also shift E here to keep the arrow butt flat as well. So I'm just going to do that. And now we should have a nice functional arrow. Should be fairly low poly as well. This one is with the subdivision. It is 1300 triangles. You could actually take the subdivision off, and it is a lot less. It's 340. So there's your arrow. I will leave the subdiv on. That's fine. And with that arrow, you can just go ahead and bring back everything else. There's the bow. I can hide the reference as well. And then here's our original. And then that's the last thing I'd really do here is just scale it to kind of be a comfortable size for the bow. I don't know if there's like an actual like ratio of how big the arrow is supposed to be relative to the bow. But I think I'm just going to scale until it looks right. And that looks pretty good. Since I already have an arrow here, I don't really need this second one, but I do have it. I'll just go ahead and hide it. We'll just keep the first one. And that's our bow. And what we're going to do to like basically implement the rest of this stuff is we're going to go ahead and kind of put this stuff in Godot. So let me go ahead and open the Godot project. I think I might just open a new scene in my existing one just to demonstrate. So let's go ahead. Okay. So as I've shown earlier in the last stream, this is just what the game's like. And then she's got this like attack combo I did. I'm not going to really show how to do that here. Maybe afterwards I could just kind of poke around the project to show you. But we're going to focus more on the like actual like this kind of motion. So here's what we'll do. I'm just going to create a new scene. It'll just be a 3D scene. We'll just call this like test, right? Nothing special, just a test scene. And then we're going to need to create some of the other stuff. So let's go ahead and import or import the bow, the character, all that stuff. So to do that, also I'm going to make this full screen too. Like a full screen. There we go. We'll show you what you can do for the bow. So I think I did mention before in the previous stream, we've had the 3 states of the bow. We have the default, we have the fire, which is just like an animation like this. And then you got the pullback, which is, yeah, right here. So actually, I think, yeah, you'd pull back more like that, right? But this is fine. I'm gonna leave it like this. Just go back to default state. And really all I need to do is export this with the bow, and we'll make sure that when it imports into Godot, it has this armature, this bow, and this arrow scene, and they're visible. So typically the way I would just export that is you just go to File, Export GLTF, and then just going to go to my weapons. I'm not going to actually export it here, but what you would see is we want to just export what's visible, just makes it a little easier. Transform, data. In this case, I will apply modifiers. Don't have really any shape keys to worry about. Animation, actions. This should be fine. If this doesn't work, you can do analyze tracks, and that will work just fine. And once you do that, that should export for you. I already have this here, so I'm not going to bother doing that. Well, and then that's going to be the bow. Let's go back to the game. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to just, I'm actually just going to put this in its own folder. Test. Just so I can not really use too much of my existing code and stuff like that. So we're just going to have this test scene here. We're going to import the character as well. Should have, this is the character I currently have. This is just the scene with the model, basically, all the jiggle bones and stuff as well. There's the attachments. The like from here, we can do some other stuff. So let me go ahead and just throw her in here for now. We can work with this. Then we're going to want the bow. And when you import the bow, you should be able to get a screen like this in Godot, and you should see that you have the bow and the arrow separate. And then it should also import the default to pullback in the release states. As I can play this, yep. So this imported pretty good. In the bow scene itself, we're going to want to configure animation tree. But here's what I'll do instead. I'll just do this from scratch, right? So go from the test scene. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the GLB file itself. And I'm just going to do new inherited scene. Get the bow. And then what you can do too is if you want to add a material to it, you can just add it under the surface material override here or under geometry material override. They're about the same. This one's a little bit easier to access actually, I think, in code, so we'll put it here. I'm just going to cheat for now and just take my existing one, which is not here for some reason. Why not? It might be actually on the mesh itself. Is this material? No, it's not. Okay. Then interesting. That's bizarre. Okay, I'm not sure how this gets material. Well, anyway, the arrow here, I put it this way, right? Just gonna copy this. And you can just kind of go under your bow, paste it, and then now you see like you got a material here. Same thing for the arrow. I'm just going to do the same thing. Geometry, paste value. So now we have a material on it. It's very wooden. That's okay though. We'll just stick with that. And then what we're going to need to do is configure to 3 animation states. So there's going to be the default, the pullback, and the release, which do work. But we need to also hook this up so that we can go into the code and we can kind of leverage the pullback based on the character's motion as well. So so to do that, just go ahead, add a new node. Let's see, move this here. We're just going to do a animation tree, and then we'll just select the animation player, and then just create a new animation root node, or no, sorry, not that one. Animation blend tree. This is, I believe, the one we want. Here we go. And then basically what it's going to look like is we're going to have a blend space 1D in here to blend between the idle and the pullback state. So we'll just add the blend 2, or blend space 1D. And we can plug it in here for now. Open in the editor. And we got to set the values from 0 to 1. Then you got to do create points here. So I'm just going to create add animation as the default. And then over here, and pullback. And then if I do this, now I can see I can go between the 2 states. So that should be good now. Set this to 0. And then now we would also need a way to fire the bow. So to do that, I'm going to do a one-shot. This should be the in here. output, we'll just call this fire. And then animation will be the fire animation. Release, that is also fine. So now it should be good. So if we move this all the way to that, you see the fire plays. So what we'll have to do is reset this back to 0, but we can do that in the code. That's not a big deal. I'm not sure if there's a way to do it in the one shot or in the blend tree. This is going to be so that's how we can kind of work with it, right? If we compare this to the animation tree here, yeah, it's the same idea. Pull back fire, you got all that stuff. So the bow looks good. Let's go ahead, save this. You can just call this bow. Save this here, and we're just going to put it in our test scene. If we go to test scene, you could just go ahead and drag that in here. Get the bow. You can move that as well. I won't worry about it too much. So there's going to be some other components to making this work as well. Let's go ahead and get a camera. We can put a camera here. Transform. Okay. We can do something like that. So now when we we program this, we'll have that. Yeah, just put her at 0. There we go. Let's go ahead and run the scene real quick. Yep, there's really nothing happening right now. That's okay. What we're also going to need is we're going to need our character's animation. So with the character model imported, we could just kind of keep the character like this, because there is an animation player on here. Actually, there is not, but I don't think it's hard. I don't think we have to worry about that right now. So we'll keep that. Okay. So next we're going to want to get the character's animation. So we're just going to basically get so actually what I'll do instead is I will we're going to go ahead and make a, actually I will remove the character here for now. Talk about opening so with the character, I'm going to instead do a, so you can do it off the model here, but basically this is already a inherited scene from the GLB file. So instead I will just go ahead and make a new inherited scene off of this one. And then we can add the animation player here. We'll just do the animation player. For now, the animation should be able to, okay, it does know the root node. I think it's gonna be, let me also show you kind of how the animations are stored in my game, or how we can do that. I think if it, just open Blender, right? Just open another copy of this real quick. So, I have removed the animation we made from this file because I moved it over to a separate file where I keep all the animations. And the main reason for that is because it's a lot easier to export and quicker to export the animations when it's not exporting the model with it. Because it's times when I would click export with the model and the animations, and it takes like over a minute to export, sometimes longer. So if you separate the file and just make a file where you link the rig from the character and you make all your animations in there, you could just export the animations without the mesh, and Godot will still be able to open it. So we still need to export the character basically, so that the character and the rig are something that's in the game, which is kind of like what I already showed you. So here is, and the video I have, the complete modeling guide, actually does talk about how you can export this, but basically nutshell version is to export the character. You just go to, you do a GLTF, you find where you want to export it, and then it's same, kind of similar. Visible objects, data, mesh. I actually have apply modifiers off here. This is mostly for shape keys. I don't have shape keys on the model yet, but I was planning to use them for facial animations down the line. It may depend on kind of like what you're doing with your character. You can check this or not check this, but if you check this, it will not export shape keys. So that's why I kind of done it in a way where I don't need this. Just export the normals. I also don't export the material because I just do it manually in Godot. There's shape keys here. I don't have any, but it's fine. The armature, rest position, and export deformation bounds only, so you don't get all the junk with Rigify. Skinning, you can just leave that as is. You don't need any of this stuff. Here, you don't actually need to do... On your base character, it may still not be a bad idea to just export the default animation, which is just the T-pose or whatever you have. That way, when it imports into Godot, it will still load an animation player for you on the model. But in newer versions of Godot, it works fine if you don't do this and then later attach an animation player. But basically, you can basically uncheck this or just export that T-pose, and it should be fine. So I'm going to just cancel out here. Because let's just assume that we already exported the character. And I'm just going to open the bow file. So basically the way that you do the bow, like animation, you can do it this way, is you can make a new file. Basically, I'm just going to show you on a blank what you can do. Is you can link assets into this file. So I click this link, file link. I can go to where I have my character, right? Let's see. It doesn't look like this is the game itself. Okay. But if I were to find it, let's see. I gotta just find my. Give me a sec. Alright, so if I did like the character, you can link it and just select the object with the armature, and then also just the model as well. So you want to make sure they're both imported. These are all checked, that's fine. Just link that, and now you have your character, and then you could do the same thing for the bow. Armature in the bow, right? Don't need an arrow. And that's like how you could start doing stuff in here. And then what you would also do is, because you can't edit this at all currently, so to fix that, you just go ahead and you select the armature here, and you just do a library override, make, and select it in content, and you got your character. You can move her now. The bow, just do the same exact thing, library override, select it in content, and then you're good to go. And then you could basically just do all the animation you want in your animation file. And then what you can do is, like, once you're done animating, you could just export the rigs. You'd have to hide the meshes though, or else the meshes will export along with it. I think there might be a toggle you can do. I'd have to mess with that a little bit, but if you hide the meshes and just export the rigs, it should still work. We could mess with that real quick. But I'm just going to go ahead and open the sample file I have. And then go to the so one thing that I did have an issue with was I started to figure out how the IKs work in Godot to make the bow kind of attach to her hand a bit better and work that way. But here I'm just going to kind of do like a fake it approach. So since we do have the reference to the bow, we can make the bow draw essentially a fixed amount. And then we'll just line up the bow so that when the character is in the draw position, like here, right, we can make it so that her hand's in the right spot with the bow. Another thing to keep in mind here too is that on the character I have this weapon, which is basically just a bone attached to her hand, so that you can attach the weapon to that bone and you can rotate it so that basically the bone moves. The weapon moves. Just gonna kind of do a small rotation, like, oops. So that it kind of looks like it's in her hand. Just to the best of your ability, basically. And I'm just going to keyframe this. Same here. And then we can reverse, and we could just kind of revert the keyframe here. And then it should be fine. Okay, so this is having an issue where, okay, the bow's twirling, but it looks like it's applying from the other animation. Let me see what's going on here. Okay. You know what? I'm just gonna undo all this real quick. Let's go ahead. Go to frame 1 here on the basic bow. Weapon. Weapon R, yeah, we could just delete these. Make sure I didn't kill the whole animation. Okay, we're good. Okay. And I'm just gonna Alt G R rotate. There we go. So we're good here. Just keep that keyframe. Go to when she fully draws the bow. Frame 19. Then we can rotate the bow so it lines up. Yeah. If I should wait for more viewers. Yeah. I guess the problem is more viewers might not even show up, so that's okay. I also don't stream all that much, so I'm mostly just getting started in the streaming thing, so I'm kind of expecting a pretty low turnout. My streams are also going to be available on YouTube once they're finished anyway. In the future, though, it would be interesting. I can definitely wait for more viewers to show up. I just don't know how much it's going to make a difference right now. Let's see. Just kind of rotate this. So fake it till you make it. There we go. The bow's in position now. And this is where she releases it. And then as she puts it away, she's going to duplicate this over here. And then we'll just duplicate this over to wherever the animation ends, which is frame 4. Okay, so now this is one way you can make it so the bow actually faces the correct direction. So yeah, of course, now you can see how I think it might actually be better if I just did this. Have it in the right, yeah, it's in the right direction to begin with, yeah. And the bow's not actually going to be drawn at this point anyway, so when she is addressing it, the string should be right at where the bow is. Yeah, and we'll just kind of do this. So that should fix that problem. Anyway, what we're going to want to do now is we're going to go ahead and lost a train of thought. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and export the animations. So basically, here I had trouble using the actions, like exporting, like we talked about earlier. So what I did was I took all of these animations, pushed them down to the NLA stack, which is right here. So you just want to add all your animations to this point here. They can all be in here. Let's see, so basic bow goes, you can see it right there. Just delete this one. Delete track. Or, why won't you go away? Okay, well, anyway. It is there, but actually I'm just going to clear all these. The NLA tracks can get be a kind of a pain sometimes. If you really have problems with it, you can just go into here, and then the animation is just clear animation data. And then you can start selecting the rig. And just select all the animations, push down. Okay, so now I have them all here. Um, and then, once that is done, I'm just going to go ahead and export GLTF. This is your animations. Here, want to actually, to export the animation, is going to want, Godot is probably going to want to, it's probably going to come with the model too, right? So we don't really want to do that. So what we're basically going to do is we're going to be creating what's called an animation library in Godot. And that allows you to basically, you can export just any old 3D model format, but Godot can load it as an animation library, so you can attach it to basically anything that has the rig to support it. It's a pretty cool feature. Let me actually go ahead and show you what that would look like. So what I did is you export this bow file, which has all your animations. In this case, it actually did export with the model. But yeah, you get all these animations basically to come with it. And what you can do is instead of, if you go to the bow, you'd say import as animation library instead of scene. And then you can also configure it, so in the advanced here, you just go, you can do save animation, set animation save paths. So you can also save the animations as individual files. I chose to do that just because of the way I structured my game, but you don't necessarily need to do this as long as you have the animation library. You can set up the animation library on your mesh. So let's going back to Blender. Look at this. We export the bow. Let's go ahead and wait. Basically, what I did is all bow attacks will be in this bow file, and with characters that share similar rigs, they can all do this attack. Include. So you do have these options: the selected, the visible. The visible is going to also export the mesh, which we don't necessarily want to do. So there's this mesh. Let's see. Scene graph. Material. We don't want that. We don't really need shape keys or anything. Remove armature object. I don't think we want to do that. Flatten bone hierarchy. We don't need. Yep. And then, yeah, basically it's going to be we'll do our NLA tracks this time. Armature. So some other stuff in here. Here's what I'll do. I'll hide the character mesh. Hide the bow mesh. Also hide the bow armature because that was just for reference. Now we can just export this as we plan to originally. It should still work, but we'll double check. We'll just do weapon animation. It's visible. I'll just do NLA tracks, and then that should export. It should be pretty quick. If we go to the bow, see, you don't see anything here, but the animations are here. And they should be updated as well. And we got the animation library. So what we're going to do now is, since we have this bow animation library, we're going to go over to animation player on the character scene. And we're going to go ahead and do manage animations and just load a library. And then we get the bow, this library right here. And you should see that we got all the attacks. in here. What it'll also do now is that it'll also make it kind of like a folder on the character. Should be good to go. And then we'll just test the animations. They do work, which is pretty cool. And we're just going to kind of leave it at that. We'll save this. Our test scene is a character. Test scene now. We can add her now. Let me go find it. Boink. Okay. Just reset her transform. Okay. So I might flip either her around or the camera around because she is facing the opposite way. So we'll flip the camera around. Move it. Yeah, we could see her. It's a little far though. Move it down a little bit. Yeah, something like that. Okay, not gonna really worry about it too much. The camera itself also should probably be something like that. Now what we're going to do, so you could probably, depending on the way you want to set this up in your game, you could probably do, you could put the bow in your character scene if you wanted to. But we're going to do, this. We're just going to instead click on the character and we're going to do editable children. Just so you can see the hierarchy in Godot. You can take this bow and put it under her, the hand she holds it. So this weapon here. And then just reset the transformation. You may need to rotate the bow a little bit. Which you can do. We're just going to stop her on a frame, like where she draws the bow. And we're just going to have to rotate the bow a little bit in the weapon handle here. So this rotation, there we go. That looks good. So now we should be able to see that the bow works, right? But we do also have to sync up the draw and stuff, and then there's also the arrow, which is attached to the bow mod, which we don't necessarily want to have right this second, right? So we can do some work here. So in my game, I actually did control this through code. You could hypothetically do, I think you can also add a track here. You could do, it's like a blend shape track on the bow probably. No, sorry, not blend shape. Sorry, that's shape keys. We don't want that. So you could probably link them too, but because the bow is not really part of the same file, we're just gonna have to write some code basically. If we do this as FPS 60, you can see that the bow starts basically drawing on frame 3, right? And then you have frame 19 is where it's fully drawn, right? So you want frame 3 to be the start where the bow is not doing anything, right? It's not drawing yet. And then you want to set it so that when it reaches this frame here, it's going to draw it frame 19, right? And then when it fires, you could play a fire on frame 21 for 22. So I'll transfer the bow from the fire animation to the or the frame animation to the pullback animation to the release animation. So a simple way we could accomplish this is we can go ahead and make a script on our bow. Let's go ahead, create bow, and then we'll just add a script. Put it in the test folder, just test bow. And then all we're really going to need to do is we're just going to need to be able to define, I'll put this on the side here for now. Okay, that's full screen. No, it's fine. We'll do it like this. So we're going to just basically make some export bars. We'll say start frame, export bar, and then we'll have a draw frame, export bar, and a release frame. So if we can do something like that too, if we wanted to. We could do it this way. We could also try to tie it to the animation directly. But we'll do it this way. Because there's so many animations, it would be much harder to just tie it directly to them. So instead we will start with this. For some reason it does not like, the IntelliSense is not working for some reason. Anyway, so what we need to do is we also need to be able to reference the animation state machine, basically, that we have. And to do that, usually it's this animation tree, right? On ready bar. So we get that, right? And then we're going to want to give the bow some logic to basically start drawing, and then when we want it to go. So basically what we could do is we'll eventually hook the bow up to the player script, so the player can control the bow that way. And then what's going to happen is it's going to, we basically can just tell it like how we can make a ratio between the draw state and the release state, basically. The existing code, I can open up what I have for the existing bow code, basically. This bow controller right here. I have it so that the pullback increases basically every frame. And it's a ratio of the frame where the release would happen, basically. But we also need to account for the bow itself. There is the bow model here. And this is kind of what we're looking for, is we need to access the blend position for our pullback. So just thinking real quick. So we're basically, let's start with this. Pull back. And then we can actually remove these variables here. We don't need them. This is this. And then basically the way this will work is we want to access the state machine, right? So we have this, if you go to the animation tree, we have this pullback, right? This is where we want this to be, basically. And if we go to the tree, we should be able to blend between it. Sometimes the animation player kind of overrides it. Let's just go back to the state machine. So if I do it here, it should work. Yep. Yeah. But to access this in code, you have to be able to say is parameters fire request, that's for the fire animation. And there's pullback is parameters pullback blend position, which is what we got here, and we got fire request right here. So then what we can do, another thing I do, I'm also just going to hide the arrow for now. Save that. Now we can go add a script to the character. We'll just call it, yeah, we'll just call it character, right? This is where we would want to tie the information to the animation and stuff like that. So this animation, I'm just going to have it we'll play it on load as well, just to make sure that we have, oops. We'll play it on load just to make sure that she's always firing, so we can just play around with this. And then we're just going to have to get that string pullback to work here. So one way you could do it, potentially, is you can add functions on this timeline, right? So we could do like, kind of like right here, right? Create a function track, right? Call method, and it would be on the character herself, which doesn't seem like, okay, see, I can add one. So let's go ahead and just go ahead and add so you can do it this way, right? You can do func start draw, right? And we could do func end draw fire. We can just do bar is drawing. It's false, and then we're also going to want to do a onReady. Actually, we'll just do it this way. Export bar bow. It's going to be a new 3D. And we can get the information from the bow this way. And then we'll just do bar draw frames. Or yeah, float. So what will happen is this will set is drawing to true. This will set is drawing false. And this will play the bow's fire. If bow. Yeah, we'll just do something like that. Yeah, is drawing, it's true, is false. So what's going to happen is in this process animation, we're going to have to set some of the bow parameters. So we get the bow fire here where it's got the pullback, and then we're just going to have to do bow.pullback here. And then what we're going to have to do is this. If is drawing, we're going to do something like that. Not going to use that suggestion yet. It's just going to be plus delta, right? Yep, basically that's all we're going to really do. And that's, and then we'll just add the function here, which should just be start draw, go to frame 19-ish. This is where she ends the draw, right? Add 21, this will be fire. And then if we go here, we will go back to the test scene, we'll assign the bow, and then if we look at that, oops, I had not, alright, we'll load the test scene. See, now it kind of works. We'll have to adjust the draw rate though. So it's going to be a ratio, more or less. But we can play around with this. The problem is you can't draw it completely unless you have, you know how many frames it's going to take to do the draw. So, so there's like a way to do this, but we'll instead on the character just do the var star this will be 3, and this will be 19, right? So once we get the start draw, we can kind of just do that. And it's going to be delta times the, basically a ratio of, trying to think. No, because it's a ratio of 0 to 1, so I don't think we even need delta, right? So it's going to be, so it's going to be 19 minus 3, right? That's going to be how many frames it is. And then, actually, I believe we could just do delta. Yeah, we'll play around with this number. So yeah, it's a little bit better, but it does full draw automatically, so we don't want that. Let's try this. about it for a second. Yep, I loaded my game again. Okay. So let's see. Need a try. Oops, I killed the game. Give me a sec. I accidentally killed the window. I hit the wrong button. My bad. Alright. Okay, I gotta think about the math here. It's been a minute. It would be really cool if there was a way I can also hook up the bow animation player to it. To the model. So I'm thinking. Okay. Yeah, my logic is very scuffed. Just thinking about this real quick. Because we wanted to go from 0 to 1. So it's going to be 16 basically. I think it changes just. I don't think that makes much of a difference though. Let's just print. Test it real quick. Kill that. So it does get to higher numbers. So the 16, 32, 48, 8, 9, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, and then it starts again. So it should be resetting that pull back to 0 whenever he starts. Right. But it hits 2.56 typically here. Okay. If I did it as delta, right? But I actually have to, I also have to do this. Right. Start draw is going to be pullback or bow, yep, equals 0. Just double check there. And frame my start frame, so it's going to be 19. Hello! Thank you for joining the stream. We're just messing around with bow and arrow stuff in Godot. I'm also just having a math crisis for some reason. Trying to do something like this real quick on the fly. But basically, just trying to make it so that when we draw the bow, it lines up with the animation. I have to think about if there's a way to add the bow to the animation track, maybe. You can add. Let's see. There is. Let me see something. If I do this. Add the bow here for a second. I want to mess around with something. Add a property track to bow. Okay, so we cannot see the animation player on the bow. What I do is editable children though. Maybe we can. We have, so you can actually, if you have it all connected, you can. So then you can just do the blend position right here. And it's like super easy. But I actually think I figured out the math anyway, so let's just go ahead and undo that. The problem with doing that is if you want to swap bows out or anything like that, it just makes it a lot harder to do. It's better to just kind of decouple a logic a little bit. Because at least here, I can put the bow, I can put whatever bow I want here. And the bow, every bow is going to still have that drawing capability. Even though this logic's like very, you know, it's 1 divided by. There we go. See, now that works better now. It's a little bit. The fire animation is not really doing a whole lot for us. Okay, but we can at least slow it down now, right? But I'm going to take it out of the physics process because that's not correct. And then we could try that again. Okay, so let's take a look here. There might be a collision between the fire animation and the rest of what's going on as well. So yeah, see there's like a, somewhere in here, it's like not resetting the bow back. So the bow should be doing that. Let's see, so bow pull back is 0 when you start to draw, right? So if we look here, we print started. Now we can do right, and then we could say, and then we'll just do that, run it real quick, take a look. And then we can take a look at this log here. So there's, yep, fired bow, started bow draw, but it just didn't really stop. So like this one worked fine. Ended bow, right? Fired bow, right? And there's a bunch of, so it's definitely like, I think when we slow it down as well, it actually kind of got worse. So it's like not actually tied to the frame as nice there. Let's take a look at the code again. Hold every frame. Let's do it this way too. So if I go to the animation player, right, I'm just gonna take this off and the repeat off. We could watch it more closely. And then what we'll do is we'll just add a button. Oops. To do this. The animation player. So we're just going to have to play an animation. We do do a function. Alright, input dot is action just pressed. We'll just do it this way, and we'll play the animation here. I'm just going to grab the name of the animation. I know this is very hard code right now, but it's this one, bow, BSC bow 1. And I need another name for the button. Let me look at my input map. We got one that's called attack basic, which is just the D key, so we'll just use that one. Give this a try. Okay, see, the draw is still messed up. So let's go ahead, take a look. So this part's fine, that's no big deal. I'm actually just going to rerun the game while it's in slow motion. So we get this process here. I don't think physics process is correct though, but it should have. Slow-mo should also work there. I'm not sure why it doesn't, but let's just do it without slow-mo. Whoops. Yeah, ready, full draws. Okay. How many is this? So if we look at this is how many times it fired. It should really be only 16 times, but this is not. There is, let's see how many. There is more, right? So it's firing this twice as much, right? So it needs to be firing at the rate. So I was gonna say, what if I did times delta here? See, it does make it just a little too slow. So it's a little bit see, the problem with that, see, is that it let's try this. So I keep doing that. Let's see. Yeah, it's like the delta does need to be involved here. Yeah, it should be 1 divided by 16, basically. Because there's supposed to be 16 frames. So it should be... But with the delta, it does... just trying to think about this. Let's try it on a physics process real quick. See what it looks like. It actually looks fine on a physics process. Not in slow-mo, though. It's fine in normal speed, though. Yeah, I'm not sure why it doesn't work on slow-mo. Works okay. Yeah, it works perfectly on physics process, but once you do slow-mo, it doesn't work. Let's see, what if I just did... Sick. Yep. It's fine. Yeah, the idea here, anyway, was just that, yeah, the idea here, anyway, was just that we wanted to be able to, decouple the bow from the character. I mean, the character still has to access the bow, but it's not a big deal when the character knows it has a bow to equip. And then we need to be able to tell the game to draw the bow, so from 0 to that end frame. So it's like this ratio is basically what we want to do. I do have this slow-mo mechanism. I gotta find it where, but basically all it's doing is it's doing the speed, right? It's what's it called? Time, I think. time scale, I think it's called. Yeah, it's this engine.time scale that this allows the game to slow down basically. So that's why we could look at it as slow-mo, right? Okay. Time scale. So if we look at the time scale, the speed multiplier which game clocks updates, it's set to 2, the game runs twice as fast, it's set to the game runs half as fast. Affects timer scene and other simulations make use of delta time such as node and physics process. Keep this property above 0, yeah. It does not affect audio playback. It's not adjust. Just with values above may become less precise. Let's see. Yeah, so it's like you have to factor the delta in there somewhere. For the slow-mos, basically. But I'm not going to worry about the slow-mo right now. But this is like one way you can do it. If you had the bow coupled to the character, you could actually keyframe it in the animation in Godot. Yeah, and basically that all the way that would work is you would just attach the bow here. The children editable, and you can add a property track from the animation tree on the bow. That's just this blend position. And then what you could do is you could go set that value on the frames, right? So this value, just at insert a key, it's 0. And then at 19, insert a key, that's 1. And then it should work like that. And then it would fire normally. And then you could just duplicate this. I'm just having a little bit of trouble getting the frame synchronized in the code. But this is like one way you could do it. So this here, if you were to look at it, does have, okay, now I want to go back to, there are a couple of problems with this approach though. Is I have to do a little bit more testing though. But if you were to change this animation in Blender, I don't know if these custom keyframes are going to stay. They should, as long as you save the animation to a separate file. But even so, I don't completely trust that, especially if you change the animations like rate and stuff like that too, like the frame number of frames. This is a very easy way to do it though, if your animation is tightly coupled like this, and there might be use cases where that's actually valid. But that's kind of why I wanted to be able to say, it would just be easier to say like, okay, well, if I can define a start frame and an end frame, just wait till like the start frame and then have the character manually draw the bow, basically. So we do also have this here, but this is not exactly useful either. So we're going to remove these. Should see now nothing will happen if we go back to the game. Right. We got pop-ups, and they just went away. Okay. So there, as long as the character has access to a bow, and she's got 2 bows now, because I could just delete this one. This is not meant to be here. Yeah, my bad. This is supposed to be a bow. Let's see. Right. Oops. So yeah, basically so the core of it is just knowing when the start frame and the end frame are. So you're hitting the draw, right? Or when you start playing the animation, you need to basically know what frame the animation is on. So each time you play, so we might be able to actually do this a little bit easier. We just call this frame. And we'll just have this as an int, right? And then we're going to do repurpose the start draw function, right? Bow, play, and then the pullback of the bow is 0 still, right? And then we're just going to do start draw. And if you're drawing, you're basically just going to do frame, or frame plus equal 1. And then it's going to be a percent, basically. It's going to be end frame minus frame divided by basically end frame. And then this is going to be basically a 1 times just to force it as a float. And then we do not need this anymore, right? But we could do, if frame is greater than end frame, do it just like this. And then we just, and then the frame to fire the bow, basically, you need a frame where your bow would actually fire. That would be export for fire frame, which was like 21 or so, right? And then frame 0, right? We could just do the pullback, and then if fire, right? His drawing is false, right? Something along these lines, I think. If we can give this a try. So it's still got a little bit of work to do. Frame, right? The pullback, we're, instead of incrementing, we'll assign. It's actually going in the wrong direction. be able to fix that. So frame minus n frame. Let's see. Yeah, that's why. It's gonna be actually. Yeah, so it'll be frame minus start frame divided by in frame minus start frame, I believe. Let's give that a try. Okay, see, that looks better now. Let's try it on the slow-mo. Okay, so it's still a little bit broken there. But it's because that frame keeps incrementing. But the way I think you could fix that is that it's just frame plus equals delta. And then the delta, the frame just becomes a float, basically. I'm not 100% sure. Oops. Actually, I think this might not work. Yeah. Now I need that code. Give me a sec. Yeah, no, we keep it this way. I have to like double check exactly how this time scale works, because these process functions are going to be fired more frequently per frame, I guess. You kind of think of it that way, like in a slow-mo sense. It's you could factor in the engine's time scale, but it's supposed to do that already with the delta, but it doesn't really seem to be doing that. Or at least from what I can tell. So I'm doing something wrong with it, clearly. But anyway, so this was how you would do the basically the bow animation thing. The last thing I would do in this case is we'd have to talk about making the arrow. That shouldn't really actually be too difficult. Can create a new scene, basically just called arrow, right? Create a new scene, just call it arrow. It's in here. And there's really not much to it right now. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to just do this. Just do a mesh instance. And it's going to be a placeholder. So the arrow itself is going to basically be empty, right? And then what we'll do is we'll create a script on it. Just call it arrow. And then when we instantiate the arrow, we're just going to set... so there's going to be a couple of things about this. First of all is we'll want the character to hold the arrow in her other hand while she's drawing the bow. And then you'll want to be able to fire the arrow and then have it move in the direction it's facing, basically. So actually the arrow itself is not going to simply just spawn and start moving in a direction. We'll want to be able to tell it when to fire, basically. So we can control that a couple of ways. We can control that kind of through the player and the bow. So what we're going to do on the arrow itself is we're just going to do a var is fired, and it's just going to be false. Well, actually, yeah, and then there's just going to be a fire function, and it's just going to say is fired is true. And then you could make this just a regular old physics body. Typically, if you want this to interact with your game, you're going to want to have this has some sort of collider on it. But for the sake of the demonstration, I'm not going to do that right now because in our testing, there's nothing to really hit. But then we'll go to the physics process function here, and then we're going to say if is fired. We're just going to go ahead and translate it, something like that, right? Just give it, just hard code it for now. I don't care. Another thing we're going to have to do when we instantiate the arrow is we're going to have to set its mesh to the arrow that's along with the bow. So that's why we have basically nothing here. What we could do is instead of this placeholder mesh, we can go ahead and put a box or something here that we clearly know if it's getting changed or not. So we're just going to save that. And then if we go back to some of our other code, so we got the character here. So rather than instantiating the arrow when the fire happens, we will want to instantiate it when the player actually starts the animation, so that the arrow appears in our hand. So there's the start draw here, right? We'll have to basically add some code here that says instantiate the arrow scene. So we could do this a couple of ways. We could go in here and we can create a pack scene. It's just the arrow, so it might just be easier to do it this way. Let's do export var arrow pack scene, and then you'll see when we go here, we can just go to arrow scene. There we go. And then I don't know why I keep getting this pop up, but it's fine. We're going to go here and we're going to do var arrow.instance, right? And then it's going to be, so we're going to have to add to the handle the other hand, basically. I'm going to do a little logic here. Should be on ready. Right, and then we got, actually, sorry, this is going to be, and then I might have to play around with this a little bit, but hopefully that should reference. And then basically we'll just do weapon handle, because it's in our right hand the bow, right? So weapon handle L dot add child the arrow. And then we'll create the arrow instance, and then the arrow instance dot it needs the mesh instance, so we need to reference that scene. So we go to the arrow here. All right, we're gonna do right, yeah, just something like that, right? And it's just going to be bow.arrow mesh, right? I think the bow actually does have that, right? We get a bow. Yeah, okay. And then that's what we had to do, is we had to get the arrow mesh from the bow. So we could just do it this way. It's going to be so we could do, I think onReady will work. And it's going to equal, it's going to be assigned to, yes, it's going to be the arrow.mesh. I believe that will work. We might run into some issues, but we'll fix them as we go through it. Right, it does not know what the pack scene is, so it probably just broke. Let's see. Oh, no, we don't worry about that. It is here, so I gotta see why that's an error. Give me a sec. Next is an instant. Oh, that was the autocomplete from Copilot. I think it's stuck on Godot 3 for some things. Let me fix that. So it's instantiate. There we go. So actually you can see that there's an arrow here now. And it does look like it's the correct one. So one problem with this, yes, and you can see it's the correct one. It's kind of hard to tell because there's no light in the scene. We'll just go ahead and add one. It's no big deal. Just add the environment, the scene, and the sun. And we can just do it that way. See, now you can see the arrow is clearly here. And it is on her hand. It's not exactly in the right location, but that's okay. So it's not a box, it's the correct arrow mesh, which is good. One thing you'll notice is that the arrow actually doesn't have the right material on it. That's fairly easy to fix too. All you would really do is you'd have to go to arrow bow. So set arrow mesh, so we'll want the bow basically here. But what we can do is we can get the bow's material override as well. And then that should fix the problem, right? So we just have to get just have to access this. This is probably actually a good this would be a good argument for actually making the arrow a separate scene from the bow. I guess, because then you don't have to worry about the material also having to be assigned. But in this case, they basically are sharing the same texture, the same material, so instead, just take this arrow. This is this arrow here. It's a mesh instance 3D, and we can do a small refactor because this also has some material on it. And it's just the arrow itself. So when we do that, now we go here, and it's a instance 3D, right? And it's going to be mesh.mesh, and then material override equals that. That should fix the problem. See, now it's got the material on it, so we should be good now. Now let's actually make the bow fire. So if you want to get like exact locations and stuff like that, I just on my character rig, the weapon handle is just not really in the right spot. I had to fix it. Um, yeah, let's go ahead and make the bow fire now. So when it's fired, it's going to translate, right? So we just have to go, and basically all we need to do is this arrow instance, we're just going to make it up here instead. And then when we do that, the bow is going to fire, and the arrow is also going to fire. And it should work. It went in the wrong spot. So now here's one issue: is it's parented to. It's a child of the hand, so it's going to follow that. Should be able to fix that just with, I think, just by doing this. Just do top level equals true, right? I believe that will fix it. Yes, it does. It does fix it. It is going the wrong way, mind you, but that's fine. We'll just change the direction that's going. Okay. And there you go. Now we got a little thing going here. If I rapidly press the button, it actually just kind of breaks it. It's kind of funny. There is a way to fix that. Just have to make it so that while the animation's playing, just don't. And not is drawing right, basically. And then one, I can also demonstrate potentially a collision. I'm going to hold off on that for now. If there is a question about how to do that, I can certainly demonstrate that at some point. So let's recap real quick. I'm going to end the stream after this. But basically what's going to happen is, or what we did, is we created a bow. And we made this arrow mesh that goes with the bow. We just combined them together so that they export together, and at least they're always going to be together, basically. Makes it slightly easier to manage. We also have the separate file for our character animation. It's just a file that holds all the animations. We linked them together with the real model files, and we just tweaked their animations properly. Then we exported this all into Godot. So we have the character. The character is already exported. We have the bow animation library. You won't see any mesh here because I purposely did not export the mesh. It's just the rig. Set the save paths on here. This created a library for us that we can use. We have the bow itself, which you could see as well. Right, the bow itself, basically. We get the bow here, and then when we just set the material up, we set an animation, basically set an animation tree up for the bow, so it can go through its 3 states. It's the pullback state, and this is just a blend tree between the default and the pullback. There's a one shot here that fires it. And that's the bow. The arrow itself is in the model, it's just hidden. So basically what happens is that instead the arrow will be instantiated alongside. Um, we'll instantiate it manually when the character actually fires the bow. Um, the character has an animation player with her rig, and we use the animation. We imported the animation library right in here, and then we just imported the animation that we're going to use. And then all we did was just wrote some very basic code for the character to basically say, okay, I want to press a button to draw the bow. And then we just did a little bit of logic to pull the bow back using the animation tree and the frames. And we also did manually state the frames that were going to be used. So that way when the character draws back, you also see the bow draw back as well. And then basically we instantiate the arrow, attach it to the character's hand, and then we fire it once it's done. The bow itself just has some code to set the pullback blend position from the state machine, the blend tree, and also just a way to fire the animation. The arrow itself is really just simply when you instantiate the arrow, you just apply the bow, the material and the mesh from the arrow there, and you can translate it once it's fired. So that way there's a state where it's in her hand, and then when it fires it, then it could then start moving. So that's more or less all we did today. I know slightly disorganized. Sometimes on these streams I'm just going to have to figure out things in real time, but I hope you don't mind. Anyway, I'm going to end the stream here, so thank you all who joined. This should hopefully be the rest of the footage that I needed for the bow video, so I'm going to be putting that together. I think of probably one or two more shorts in between as well. This should be coming out soon, so thank you all for joining, and have a great rest of your weekend.